And please take this message up to London for me. This government are liars. They can't seem to stop lying. They're lying when they say that there's no money. There's plenty of money to spend £100 billion on renewing Trident so that we can continue to threaten the world with weapons of mass destruction. There's enough money to spend billions every year subsidising the fossil fuel industry. There's enough money to hand over £9 billion a year to private landlords in housing benefit. And there's apparently enough money in the Treasury that they don't need to bother chasing up corporate tax avoidance and evasion that costs us £120 billion every year. It's a lie that there's not enough money. They're lying when they say that austerity will get the economy back on track. That is just the opposite of the truth. Holding down wages and benefits just means people have less money to spend and the economy stays stagnant. It was actually reckless gambling by the banking industry and unsustainable levels of private debt that caused the crisis in the financial industry. It wasn't spending on public services. They're lying when they say we're all in it together. In a single year under the coalition government, the richest 10% of people in the UK increased their incomes by 4%, while the incomes of the poorest 10% went down by 15%. They're lying when they say the workers from the rest of Europe are putting pressure on public services. It's not ordinary people from Spain, Poland or Romania who are cutting our hospital budgets. It's the government. They are lying when they say that they look after the most vulnerable. They're just lying. A government that cared about looking after the most vulnerable would not be closing the Independent Living Fund, which enables 17,500 people with the highest levels of need to enjoy fulfilling lives and contribute to their communities. A government that cared about looking after the most vulnerable wouldn't have cut £20 billion from local government funding, leaving care services stretched to breaking point, and that has devastating knock-on effects on the NHS. A government that cared about looking after the most vulnerable wouldn't have allowed refuges all over the country to close down, so that women fleeing domestic violence have fewer safe places to run to. A government that cared about looking after the most vulnerable wouldn't have introduced a punitive sanctions regime that leaves people without any money for food for weeks on end. A government that cared about the most vulnerable wouldn't be stopping all housing benefit for young people aged from 18 to 21. They are lying. They are lying when they say they have a long-term plan. Their plan is embarrassingly short-term. They're just setting things up for themselves and their mates to make as much money as possible, as quickly as possible. A long-term plan would involve increasing the minimum wage to a living wage and capping rents to a level that people can afford so that we can build strong communities. A long-term plan would involve investing in social care and health services and getting rid of the destructive and costly internal market in the NHS. A long-term plan would involve a massive investment in insulating and renovating housing to make it energy efficient. A long-term plan would involve redirecting investment in technology and skills away from the arms industry, that fuels wars around the world, and into renewable energy, which is urgently needed to prevent catastrophic climate change. They are lying, finally, when they say they have a democratic mandate to do all this. They're not as strong as they think. Their majority in Parliament is now very small, and only a quarter of the population voted for them. Before the election, there was a small handful of MPs who were actually against austerity in the Houses of Parliament, and now there are nearly 70, including 56 elected following an extraordinary upsurge of democratic engagement by people in Scotland. And if extraordinary things can happen in Scotland, and in Spain, and in Greece, then they can happen here too. We need to learn from those experiences. Let's focus on creating practical solidarity and real democracy. Let's support each other, expose the government's lies, and fight back against their vandalism. We can't rely on the Labour Party to save us. We have to do this ourselves. Thank you.